I'm Jimmy Lewis.
Scott Hoffman.
Tyler Belknap.
And we are with Dirt Bike Test, and today this is the Dirt Bike Test podcast. We are talking about the 2020.5
Husqvarna FC450 Rockstar Edition.
So this is Husky's precursor to what they're going to release in 2021. It is so that they can race this bike in the current Supercross season. It makes some homologation things, and it has a little bit of changes.
As well as different swing arms, some bearing and stuff in the linkage, suspension valving settings, but also the Rockstar Edition has accessories unlike the standard model with triple clamps, updated fancy wheels, Akrapovic exhaust pipe.
It's FMF on the Husky.
Yeah.
Oh, FMF.
FMF on the Husky, and it has, the triple clamps, I think, and then of course the graphics that give it the Jason Anderson factory look with the number 21. So we'll get right into the power, and what did you guys think?
I thought the Husky had very good power. It was very awesome bottom. It could pull you out of corners pretty easy if you would just lug it, and it had a good top end too.
And your current bike is?
A YZ250.
Okay, 2-stroke.
Yeah.
Okay, so 450 4-stroke, no matter what, it's going to have good power. Scott?
Yeah, I think the Husky's really good. I think the power is versatile because of the different maps, and considering I've been riding an RMC 450 the last couple months, it's definitely a lot more peppy than what I've been riding. But I like the standard number 1 map with sometimes traction control, mostly not. Unlike Jimmy likes
Map 2, and until the end of the day when the uphills got polished, I was using no traction control, and Map 1 kind of just didn't work at all for me, and I'll get into that a little bit more.
I like Map 2 with the traction control. It just kind of helped me hold on to the bike with too much power, and it just kind of helped settle it down and just keep the bike going straight.
So what's interesting about this bike is this motor is probably since 2018 and a half, factory edition. That's when we first saw this motor. It's the smaller, lower head,
right.
The more compact engine cases and stuff. So it was an all-new engine then, and then we're getting kind of close to its last run. KTM's had a lot of time to revive and not revive, but had to refine this bike. And from the get-go, I've always felt that it doesn't have a lot of rotational mass, which really helps in the handling. It's a very light-feeling bike, and I've said this even when we talk about some of our off-road bikes, it feels more like a 400 than a 450, and in the motocross terms, I'll say 350. It has that 350-ish kind of feel more than like a bigger bike, like a chunky power feel. It feels very quick revving, light revving, and so if you're coming up off of a 250F, you're probably not going to notice this. 250F riders probably rarely let their bike like lug down and really chug them, where I feel this motor maybe lacks a little bit. And then, but if you come up a little bit in the power, it always has torque, and once it gets going, and I feel like it pulls really, really good.
It's difference of opinion a little bit there. I think it still has a lot of bottom. And I liked Map 1 because I was able to, I think, use more of the little bit slower revving bottom to get a little bit more traction. But unlike these guys, they liked it a little bit more peppy compared to myself.
And the peppy allowed me to go gear high, because if I was riding in Map 1, it wouldn't pull the gear high, and I had a downshift, which meant I was revving more, and I couldn't use the chug. So I was using Map 2 to give me some chug, and most of the time when the traction was good, I didn't feel traction control really working. But it wasn't until the end of the day that the from the power from the mid-range up is super awesome, and it was just that very low end, that chug that that a Kawasaki has, that a Yamaha has. Honda, even the Suzuki has that chug. You can really let the bike work down there. But once it's up and revving, I thought it was pretty good. In fact, when I didn't have traction control, I found I was actually backing off a little bit on the uphills to go faster because it wasn't spinning so much.
Bottom line is it makes a lot of power, and it has different modes and different settings that can be catered to however you like it, and change depending on changing conditions. You can tune your bike quick.
And unlike in the past, like the buttons do make a difference.
Big difference between map 1 and 2, traction control and off. But it depends on the situation. Sometimes I don't like the traction control. Sometimes I do.
Yeah, I kind of, like I said, until the track got really slippery, I didn't use it, and you had it on.
Yeah, the whole time I had it on.
Yeah, so that's the cool thing about it. It's tunable. And one other thing I really noticed about this bike is, like I say, that it's that light nature. It also doesn't have very much compression braking. So I kind of found myself what I'll call two-stroking into the turns, like when I was doing my gear high stuff, and I had to start teaching myself not to downshift, because then I would again be, then that would really slow the bike down. But so it's, and again, that all kind of goes back to that really light rotational mass. And but clutch, I thought was the clutch was tricky on the Husky. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of as a short engagement.
Yeah, quick
engagement. So you have to really remember where your finger point is, so you can, actually have it at the right little slip point.
I was always playing with that adjustment.
Right.
Like every time I got back on the bike, I was like, which one of you guys move this thing? Because it isn't exactly where I left it. So transmission ratios are good. I think overall it's a pretty solid package, especially for someone that likes to rev their motor.
It's weighing at like 160 pounds. The suspension, the suspension was pretty good, soft. All we did was just set the sag. And then the forks felt a little stiff from stock, so we went into on the rebound, and then after that the bike rode really good, and I never had any trouble with the suspension.
So I'm more in the 200-pound range, and we were able to easily get the 105 millimeters. And the first time we went out and shot photos, we actually had it running a little low, because we knew we were going to switch right away, riders. And then the next time I went out and we brought it up to the 105 range, so it was down at 108 or so, and just that little bit really seemed like it let the back end work a lot more free. And we kind of played around a little bit with the fork, and in the beginning I was kind of just playing with the compression only, and it wasn't until these guys started slowing the rebound down that it seemed like it just really helped the bike out, settled everything down. The changes they did to the air fork, they did some stuff with the air cartridge, so the crossover where it goes from the negative pressure to the positive pressure, they changed the lengths of that, so where it kind of starts closing off is a little bit different. They did a bunch of stuff with I think they call it a trampoline valve in the mid speed, so it changes things there. Some stuff with bushings to make it so that there's not as much, because they just seem like they got that whole front end to work. And I really compared it to when we rode the 2019 bike. It just seems like it's a much more well-rounded package. It just seems more balanced. Relatively critical about the ride height. I mean, I was amazed at how much that made a difference, but I didn't feel the need to change the shock. And we're at Glen Helen here, and it got torn up and beat up. And other than what I attribute to what the tire was doing, I thought the suspension performed admirably.
All right, myself, I'm 200 plus pounds, so I'm a little bit outside the target, so we were not able to get that 105, and we probably ended up with like 110 in sag. And I ended up chasing some settings a little bit because, again, I'm a little bit outside that range, so I had to go stiffer on the compression on both front and rear, and I ended up having to mess around with a lot of rebound settings in order to get that balance. I actually had to go a turn in on high-speed compression to get the bike to ride a little bit higher to balance it out, because I couldn't get that 105 sag.
Yeah, so you're at the point where you need a spring.
Yeah, definitely need springs.
And the good thing about an air fork is
add air.
Couple pumps, yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, we were able to balance between uphills, downhills, and braking bumps to get a comfortable area where it wasn't, kicking me or a little bit scary. It's still a little bit busy because I was still a little bit low in the stroke, but again, that's just a setup issue, and I know it's probably just a spring issue. But overall, I found a comfortable, not the best setting for myself, but a comfortable setting.
And it's funny because you mentioned you felt like you thought it was riding low in the stroke, and I was for sure watching it, and it didn't look low in the
Right.
stroke where I was moving. But you had this interesting sensation where you said it was like the first 2 or 3 of the chops. Kind of explain that.
It was just like it was going into the bumps, whether it's the downhill or even the braking bumps. It would go in, and by the time I hit the third bump, I would feel that the suspension come back at me, and I could feel it in the handlebars. Either the shock would kick or the front fork would actually like kind of rebound into my hands. And it took a little bit of settings to try to calm a little bit of that down.
Yeah, and in the direction going with slowing the rebound down was, I've never been a big fan of doing that. I just don't like a slow feeling front end, but it really worked, and it kind of shows how actually easy to adjust. By the way, the rebound adjustment on the bottom of the fork is now a knob you can turn with your fingers, which is brilliant. And then you can actually reach up and turn the compression just with your hand literally while you're riding. So it's almost as easy as changing the maps. But I was actually really impressed with the handling. I thought it was or the suspension. I've always been a big fan of air forks. I like the way they work. I never bottomed either end actually, and there was some big bumps today. So overall pretty good, and you were pretty happy as well.
Yeah.
On to the handling, and I think this is where this bike is probably a standout along with the KTM because they're very similar. But this 450 feels like a 350, and maybe me personally, I give it a little bit of ding in the motor for that. But this is where I really like this bike as a 450. I remember riding the very first KTM 350, and I thought this is what a motocross bike should be, but it just doesn't have enough power. And now we have way too much power in a bike that is super light feeling and agile.
Yeah, I was not a huge fan of the Husky a few years ago, and it wasn't a bike that I would put it on my list of one to buy. And now, starting riding the last year, the 2019, and then the Rockstar Edition 19, and this bike, I've come to, I could own this motorcycle now with a little bit of suspension tuning. I thought a lot more comfort zone in the bike, and I like the way the chassis feels, even though it's still a tiny bit small for me, but it doesn't feel small, although it looks big on the motorcycle. But I could own this bike now. A couple years ago, I didn't really have any interest in owning one.
Yeah, I really enjoyed how lightweight the bike was for a 450.
And that's coming off a two-stroke guy.
Yeah, it was very lightweight, and I like that. It wasn't like too much power too and everything, and the bike just was really good at cornering and everything, and it was one of the first 450s I've ever felt really comfortable on just right away.
Yeah, so in the grand scheme of things, to me it feels like a bike that if you like a bike that turns on the front end, it's pretty easy to get it there, to set it up like that. It does that pretty well. It slides pretty darn nice. And I'm not a big fan of a rear sliding bike, but it seems like this bike's pretty versatile as far as the way it works. We had, there was some issue maybe on the initial turn in, and that's where that slowing that rebound seemed to really benefit, just helping that. And I think that you can find it's not that far off, because we're 3 completely different riding ability levels, 3 completely different weights, and everybody kind of got off the bike and said, yeah, we're pretty close. And it was just after one day, and the track was pretty beat. It wasn't a track. Usually there's certain bikes that I would not want to be out on this track on today, and that Husky was definitely not one of those bikes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I need some springs and a little bit more work and another day of setup. But after that, I think I'd find a really good comfort zone, whereas these guys probably can... I
could race it tomorrow.
They could race it tomorrow, yeah.
The bike's narrow. I kind of like what Husky does with the front of the radiator shrouds. They kind of round those things down, so there's no... I didn't find any snag points. The foot pegs are insane. Did you have a problem with the brake pedal?
I still had a problem with the brake pedal.
Yeah, it's funny. I missed it a couple times today too, and then I go, oh hey, I'm back on one of the new. I'm used to my older ones. They have the little shorter brake pedal, but notice that
brake pedal's still too long and still is tucked underneath the engine case a tiny bit too much.
And one of the big changes between the KTM and the Husky is the Magura clutch activation. So the Magura, like we talked about in the engine, is quicker. A little different feel there, but it does have the Brembo brakes, so the brakes are similar on all the motocross bikes. It's funny that going back and forth between the Husky and the KTM, I noticed I got a little more a little more rigid feel in the front, a little stiffer feel in the front, even though the tire pressure was correct and stuff. And I think that might be the Pro Taper bars, which is another difference between, and like, you know, good or bad. It just had a little bit of a stiffer tendency. And we kind of collectively think that triple clamp is with the rounded edges, and that's a KTM made part now. That's a really nice piece, and it does help with that front end feel being so nice.
Yeah, I've actually ridden a bike with back and forth testing with that clamp and a standard clamp, and there is a difference with the split and rounded and the split clamp that KTM and Husqvarna sell as their accessory triple clamp.
And that's the one that comes standard on the spikes. The front wheel is laced differently. The spoke, it's a triple cross spoke, which is, you know, hooked up to the fancy hubs. The bike looks nice. I mean, and you know, if you want to be number 21, it comes that way. And the muffler is just a Super Sano FMF, you know, blue one that it's very sound responsible. I guess some of the other mags had actually pulled the end cap out looking for more snap off the bottom, but I think the way it was delivered was good for us. And anybody else have any other things that stood out?
If you're into, you know, gadgets and a little bit of upgrades in bikes like that, I mean, you'd really want to look at the Rockstar Edition opposed to a standard one, because you do get some value there that would cost you a lot more than adding clamps, exhaust, wheels, compared to the standard 20.
And since it isn't a big change, and this is something I noticed, sometimes the first, you know, quote factory editions that get kind of pushed out are a little bit getting pushed out, so the race team is able to race with them. And this bike is, because it's been largely the same, it's just getting refined more and more. And so I don't think you're not quote testing anything for them at this time. A lot of the stuff is proven. The engine is kind of, like they said, it's, other than the mapping and stuff, it's the same engine they've been running for a long time. So overall, pretty polished package. And I think I mean, in my world, you know, we're kind of rolling to the conclusion here. We talked about it. Two of us feel like we could race it. The only thing I would do, and this is a personal preference, is I'm not a fan of the tires that were on the bike. And luckily I've ridden those tires on other bikes and changed, and I know that I can go to a kind of more softer, more bump compliant tire. So I tend to go to and this is where I'm weird, a Pirelli or a Michelin tire, which most people don't like, or even a Bridgestone for that matter. And I just get along with it better. That would be probably the first thing I would do to that bike, and line up at the start line, and I probably wouldn't. I think half of my little nitpicky things would actually go away with that.
Well, it was a dry day today with a really hard basic Glen Helen. A lot of times it's a little bit soft underneath, so I agree that.
And the MX-33s are a more soft terrain tire.
I struggled with the tire. I would have preferred, even if it went Dunlop, with the newer 53s.
Yeah,
work really well on, would have worked better in these conditions.
For sure. So, and you're ready to move off your Yamaha?
Yeah, it's definitely a good bike, just coming off of like Yamaha, switching over, and just everything about it was good. I didn't really have a struggle with the tires. I thought that they were good in the hard pack and the soft pack. They were hooking up really good for me, so I didn't really notice much of a difference for that.
Maybe you're just too young to know or care.
So, anyways, that's our impression. Anything bad about the bike? I mean, like my biggest nitpick, and it goes across from our 501 and our KTM EXC500 and that whole engine family, is that the engine has gotten so light, it just right off the crack of the throttle, it doesn't have a chug, and then it revs up kind of quick. I mean, not that it's not making power. It doesn't work down in this super low RPM range that I want. I like the handling aspects of that, but what I said is, I said, how do you like the bike? I go, man, this isn't my flavor, but this is a really good motorcycle.
I would say along the entire realm, whether it's a motocross, the off-road, or even the dual sport, they've got this chassis weight ratio where they allow the bike to feel lighter than it actually is. But again, yeah, the power tuning, to me, for motocross, it was fine with me. For off-road, I could have used more bottom.
Yeah.
I really like the shrouds, kind of, they seem to pop out more than the KTM, and just kind of pushed your feet out a little bit more, and it just kind of made it feel like as if you're almost running a desert tank, kind of like the old like Sierra 450X's kind of type feel. Like I don't know. I just didn't really like that. To where the KTM's, you could bring your knees in a lot tighter into the frame.
And you actually felt that with your knees.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. See, I find. Well, I ride bow-legged, I guess, but I found it.
He's also got legs
great.
that are probably longer than all of ours.
Oh yeah.
That probably makes a difference.
Yeah, body
yeah.
shape. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's all the good things. Yeah. Oh, hey, the seat also has ripples on it. I know you like that.
No, I do not like ripples.
So, okay, with that, we're going to kind of wrap this up. Hopefully you learned a lot about the Husky FC450 Rockstar Edition. And check out www.dirtbiketest.com for more information. And we can answer 9 out of 10 questions that you have without looking at a reference manual. See ya.